Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past.
Good evening, NUFC Matters. It's another pre-recorded show this week as I'm working away, and on Wednesday nights we always have Retro Night where I'm joined by a panel of Newcastle fans and we look back over games gone by with the team that you pick. So we were kindly suggested that Luton Town would be the team that we went for today, and I think this has been a bit of a test for everybody because there's not many games to pick from, but I'm joined by George and Mitch and Steve Hasty and Steve Wilkinson. Stu Penman is in transit today, so won't be joining us, but we will look back at the games. We will also look back at celebrity fans. We'll also look at players that played for both teams, and we'll try and concoct maybe a five-a-side team
I've got the most tenuous 11 I think you'll ever find.
I think we might just have to leave it to Mitch then, because I know everybody else will be struggling with that. But, great stuff. Very few photographs of games gone by. I do have one classic, which I'll share with you guys later. But George, over to you, mate, for your first recollection of a game that you either have been to or a game that you may have witnessed on TV or whatever with Luton Town.
Well, first game I've been to, and it's a very early one, 1956, and I was at it because at that time I was, as you know, I was on schoolboy forms with the town, and on the Saturday morning I'd been playing at North Road against Chesterfield for the Ends, and after the match, manager of the Ends, Ted Hughes, was giving everybody 2 tickets for the match of the afternoon. It was against Luton. Well, a lot of the lads didn't want to go, and some of them were giving their tickets away. So I collected a couple from my old friend George Dalton. So I had 4 tickets and quickly got home and organised my father and my uncle and anybody else who wanted to go. And so we went to see Luton, and it was 14th of January, Saturday, 14th of January, 1956, and we beat them 4-0. It was a good game. Well, it would be if we won 4-0, it would want to enjoy. But it was still, although it was an easy win, it still was a game that needed to be won because Luton dug in and had some quite reasonable performers. 21,500 crowd. And the Newcastle team had some stalwarts in, of course. Ronnie Simpson, Woolard at fullback, Alf McMichael, Bob Stokoe, Bill Patterson. Now, there's a controversial centre-half we had. Frank Brennan had gone and they were desperate to fill his slot. And Bill Patterson came initially from Doncaster Rovers with a huge reputation. But Bill Patterson, unfortunately, he was a football playing centre half, not a get them and kill them sort of centre half like Frank Brennan was, and that didn't go down well with the Gallagher crowd. So Bill struggled to make his mark with the crowd. In fact, it wasn't long before he was on his way to Rangers where he had a fantastic career. And Tommy Casey playing the other midfielder slot, really tough Irishman. When Tommy Casey went in for a tackle, you could have heard him the other side of the river. And on the right wing, Jackie Milburn, Reg Davis, little Welshman, clever little Welshman, Vic Keeble, and then another Geordie just coming into the team, who, in to my mind, never really reached the heights that he should have done, and that's Bill Curry. Bill Curry was a bustling sort of forward, a bit like Pop Robson. But unfortunately, I don't know what happened to Bill, but he seemed to lose his way and he wasn't in the team very long. He wasn't at the club very long. and he was moved on. And on the left wing, of course, was our old friend Bobby Mitchell. The 2 goals were scored by Keeble, typical Keeble headers, one from just about the penalty spot, and the other one from even further out than the penalty spot. A header like a bullet into the bottom corner, which was typical of Vic Keeble. I mean, the crowd in the Gallagher in those days used to say that if we got a penalty, we should let Keeble take it with his head. He would definitely score it if he took it with his head. Bill Curry scored a nice goal, a run from the halfway line to just the edge of the box, and then a low drive into the bottom right-hand corner. And then Reg Davis, a typical tricky goal from Reg Davis. Very slight guy, Reg, but very tough and very tricky. And he danced his way around about 4 defenders before he walloped it into the net, the roof of the net, as it happens. So that it was an entertaining game. And Luton had the likes of Buddy Ahern playing, who had a great reputation. Will Shanks, also a very tough defender, and somebody who became much more famous later as a manager, and that was Gordon Turner, who was in that team. So that they weren't a poor team, but certainly didn't lie down. But Newcastle were just too good for them, and the thing that beat them, I think, was Keeble's ability in the air. Yes, he scored, but all the time he was knocking the ball down to the others to have a go and caused them all sorts of problems. So that's my first recollection of Luton Town, and it was in 1956 in an enjoyable game at the time.
Lovely guy, Vic Keeble. Had the privilege of meeting him at the Fairs Cup on more than one occasion. I know. Yeah, I know Steve Hasty did as well. Cracking guy, lovely guy, and just pleased that I got a chance to meet him. Mitch, your first memory?
Well, I think for me, all the games I can genuinely remember, other than cup games, is sort of all in this time in the late 80s when Luton were actually a big thing. They'd got themselves up to the top flight in the early 80s. I think they won the League Cup in the 88. You know, there's another club that's won something domestically in the time that we haven't. And so all my games are concentrated around a certain era. And I know one that certainly, when I was speaking to Stu about it over the weekend, the one game we both went on and on about was the 2nd of April 1988 at home. 4-0. Now, I don't know if the other lads want to talk about it. You might as well jump in if you are, because we haven't got that many games to pick from anyway. But this is the one where if anybody watching who's has never seen the game or has never heard of the game, this is the one where the phrase Kenny Wharton sat on the ball came from, because that's exactly what he did. And that's exactly what he did. And the background is that I think we'd been stuffed by them on their artificial pitch down at Kenilworth, I think in the November of the year before in the same season, and I think they'd spent the last 10 minutes showboating, and so there was definitely a bit of bad blood, which added a little bit of something to the game. That was the team that everybody wanted to talk about, Gaza, but the highlights of that side that day was a young Michael O'Neill who got a hat-trick, and the other goal was gotten by Paul Goddard, who was absolutely outstanding. And I think we've said this before about Sarge. Totally underrated centre-forward for Newcastle United. So, you forget how good he was. Not just in terms of his ability to score goals, but his ability to make goals. And you would see if you watch the highlights on, I think Mark Crosby's got him on his YouTube channel. If you watch the highlights, how much work Goddard got through in that game. He was involved in every single goal, you know. Superb team performance, but then with Luton well and truly beaten, and it could have been 6 or 7, you know, on that day. I just seem to remember with Pepper and was it Les Seeley, I think, in goal. I seem to remember him being absolutely peppered that day. And in the last 10 minutes, we decided to do a little bit of showboating. So you had Gaza ball juggling inside our own box. And he did that 2 or 3 times until somebody got sick and nearly tried to have a swipe at him. And then, of course, that incident with Kenny sitting on the ball. And it was proper revenge. But then as the final whistle went, I seem to remember we were getting changed in temporary changing rooms at that time, and they came out of the corner at the Leazes, between the Leazes and the East Stand. And I seem to remember the Luton manager chasing William McFall across the pitch, and I think there was a little exchange of pleasantries, shall we say, in the tunnel on the way into the changing rooms afterwards, because we really did humiliate them that day. And sitting on the ball and the ball juggling was all part of rubbing it in. And of course, in the crowd, we were loving it, giving it all away, and it was a good feeling around St James's Park. It's great when you get days like that. And it was a proper sunny April day where it was just perfect for taking the mick out of somebody, and thankfully Luton were the victims that day.
Brilliant stuff. And that image there, Mark Corby, of course, has the videos online. Well worth looking at. But there is Kenny sitting on the ball. And remember right as well, they had that big centre-half, didn't they? Where they used to wear the hairband.
Foster.
Steve Foster,
Yeah.
like John McEnroe. He's one of the few players who used to get away with wearing one. But I think we got beat 4-0 down there as well, if I remember right.
Yeah, we did.
On the old plastic pitch. So,
and they'd spent the last 10 minutes doing something similar. There was showboating, and taking the mick and rubbing it in. Great
stuff. Okay, Steve Hasty.
Hi guys, all right. Well, hey, there's no more games left, is there, after that? That's it. Thank you and good night. My first one I've picked, for no other reason that my two games, I couldn't find any others, right? That's the reason I picked them. I've gone to 1979-1980 season, 3rd of May, last game of the season. We played Luton Town. We drew 2-2. We'd previously drawn with them 1-1 in the away fixture earlier in the season. And the reason I've picked this game, there's a couple of reasons, but the main reason was the performance of two strikers, one who we all know and had an amazing camaraderie and still does with the fans of a certain era because of who he was, and that was Alan Schoda. Mm-hmm. Obviously got him from Blythe, former miner, came in, scored goals when really you would never have expected someone at that particular time could produce the performances that he did and scored the goals that he did, coming from basically the non-league. But the other goal scorer on that day was a certain Billy Rafferty, who actually also scored in the first game. When the 1-1 draw. The reason I've picked this, because I thought it was quite apt, because there we've got a player in that season. He only scored 4 goals, and 2 of them were against Luton. Where have we come across that before? A footballer who only seems to score against certain teams. I think we've got a striker at the moment in a very, very similar vein. But given the fact that Billy managed to score 4 goals in a season and 2 of them were against Luton Town, that's why I picked this one. As I say, he actually made, I think he made 34 appearances that season, and scored the 4 goals. And I think he got a couple in the cup, probably the League Cup. But we finished 9th. That's that particular season, 1979-80. It wasn't a rocking season. It wasn't something that we could excite ourselves with. There was nothing really that we had going for. We're on a downer. And I cannot remember a single thing about the game. Nothing at all that we could turn around and go, so-and-so did this or so-and-so did that. There was no Kenny Wharton sitting on the ball. There was no juggling from Gaza, nothing like that. It was just, from my mind, a nondescript game, famous only for the fact that Billy Rafferty scored 1 goal of his 4 goals, and I was lucky enough to have been there.
Well, that's good enough to select for that reason alone. Steve Wilkinson, did you have any more joy?
Well, Steve said there was no games left when it come to him, and now I'm last today. So what do you think I'm going to come up with? Well, it was a case of trying to find a game with a story attached to it, and I found 2 eventually. And the first one is actually already been mentioned, and that's the game on the plastic pitch. The game before Mitch talked about, when we actually got walloped 4-0. So we've had 4 goals in everybody's game so far, but mine's on the receiving end, unfortunately. The reason there's a story attached to it, that was the time when Luton, I've got a dog barking in the back, he's gone mental, let me dog. Luton had banned away fans, and there'd been trouble in 1985 in a game with Millwall. Pretty bad trouble. And the owner of the club, or managing director, was David Evans, had decided that he was going to ban away fans. So they banned away fans for several years. And I actually moved down to work in Coventry, and I was living in hotels just started the month before. And I'd gone down with my girlfriend at the time, and we had nothing to do at the weekend. So I says, do you fancy going to the match at Luton? It's not a million miles away from Coventry, just down the M6 and the M1. And she said she would go with us. And then next day I woke up and I thought, well, can I go? You're not allowed to go. There's no away fans allowed at all. So I wrote a letter to David Evans, personal letter to David Evans, and pleaded insanity and things like that, and saying, oh, I'm a poor lad and down in Coventry, and I'm going to come down and if you let us in. Not expecting anything to happen. But I got a letter back saying, under the circumstances, we'll let you in. So what you need to do is bring this letter to the box office an hour before the kick-off, and they'll insure the letter, and they'll give you a ticket. So we did that and went in, and it was a ticket similar to what we've got now with the season tickets for its individual match. I've actually still got it somewhere. I don't know where this ticket is because I kept it. It's a little bit of plastic looking like a Barclay card, or like our current season ticket is, printed on the plastic for that particular game. And it was leading the technology, because it was a slot in the turnstile at the entrance. There was it was really advanced for the time. You were getting flimsy bits of paper when there was occasionally all ticket matches. When there wasn't that many, it was probably cup games and big games in those days. So we got this ticket and got into the ground. We had a stand to ourselves. There was only 7,000 at the match, but obviously very few Newcastle got in. I think the only ones in were people maybe that had got tickets through known players and things. So we had virtually a 2 or 3 rows to ourselves. And as I say, it was on the plastic pitch. We had quite a decent team. In some, Gary Kelly was in goal. John Anderson, Brian Tinian, Kenny Wharton, Peter Jackson, Ben Roller played. Neil McDonald, Gaza, Paul Goddard up front, Mirandina up front, Darren Jackson. So not a bad team, but they just couldn't get on with the plastic pitch. And the Steen brothers, you might remember them, Mark Steen and Brian Steen,
yes,
scored 3 of the goals between them. And it was just an embarrassing event. And I cannot remember much about the game other than they tore us apart on the plastic pitch. And I wish I hadn't bothered going. So.
Those first generation plastic pitches used to bounce like a penny floater, didn't it? It was just weird.
They were like you could only play with rubbers on. There was nothing. I mean, nowadays they're more artificial in some way now.
And if you fell down on them, you got a 3rd-degree burn.
Burn, yes. That's right.
The card that they give you, Steve, that the reason you got the plastic card, if I remember rightly, was that Evans had campaigned with the Tory government at the time with Thatcher, and it was to show that you could bring ID cards in to go at the match, if you remember rightly.
Yeah.
So he brought in this scheme of plastic cards, and he used that because he was that way inclined. He wanted to show that he was at the forefront of technology, and he was at the forefront of getting rid of football hooliganism and all that. And there was a massive campaign for us to all have an ID card to get to the match, if you remember rightly, and that was that plastic card. And he was promoting that idea, and I think he trialled it that season. Typical Tory,
It's probably where the
Colin Moynihan.
Moynihan was the sports minister.
Yeah.
Then he became Lord Moynihan when his brother died, didn't he? His brother, I don't know whether he was trampled to death by elephants or something like that. I don't know, some crazy lord thing. but it was because of the problem at his ground, where he didn't police it. We talked about this on another show. Where the riot with the Millwall fans.
Yeah.
And obviously he hadn't policed it properly in the first place. He allowed that situation to occur, and then had the audacity to say all football fans should have ID cards before we can go to the match. And then she said, oh yeah, well, and he was given permission to ban away fans, and then just to use this ID card. Well, it was obvious it was going to work. Because he was never being trialled with away fans. He was only being trialled with his own fans. And you're probably the only away fan that managed to be trialled.
Yeah, it's probably worth a fortune. I must dig it out. It's probably worth a fortune, this ticket.
Exactly, aye.
Brilliant stuff. Great memories. George, your second game, mate.
Second game. Just something about Luton, and I've never been to the ground to see football, Kenilworth Road. But yeah, it was when I was doing lots of stuff for the Home Office, they used to have lots of conferences, and they used to do deals with the hotel groups to get the cheapest deal for them to hold a conference. So you'd find yourself going to Luton. I once went to Daventry, and just down from the Daventry train station, there was a big hotel which belonged to, I think it was a Holiday Inn group. Out in the Wales, I mean, but they got it cheap, so that's where the conference was. Well, one of the conferences I went to was at a cheap hotel, well, called it the Home Office, a cheap hotel in Luton. The economics were potty because people spent that much time getting to these weird places. They were spending more money on expenses than they would have done if they had a posh hotel in London, but that's by the by. Well, this hotel in Luton, you can actually see Kenilworth Road, and that's the closest I've been to Kenilworth Road at Luton, the Luton home ground. So my second game is a 2-2 draw in February 1987, and I picked it because A, I was there, and B, it was quite an entertaining match. And it was an entertaining match because there were two fairly even teams. Our goals were scored by Goddard, who had a brilliant game, and Peter Jackson, of course, who was in the team. Our team was Thomas in goal, Wharton, Jackson, Mcdonald, Rhoda, the other Thomas, Craig, McCreary, Cunningham, Goddard, and Beardsley. And it was a team that played really good football. But the Luton team weren't slouches either. Les Seeley's already had a mention, but they had a fullback called Tim Breacher who would kick anything that moved, and it was really hard. And he scored one of their goals. Had a Johnson, and then this guy you've already had mentioned, Foster, the big centre half, and Donaghy, who used to play for Manchester City, Wilson. And then the front line was Nicholas, Grimes, one of the Steens, I think it was Brian, Newell, and Mick Hartford, who was on one of ours, of course. But that was quite a decent front line for any team, never mind for Luton. Yes, some of them were on their way out. Grimes scored their other goal, but it was an entertaining game with two teams that knew what they were doing. The hardest thing about the game for me was the what a difficult time Peter Beardsley had against Breacher and Foster, because every time he got anywhere near them, they were putting him on his backside. It really was. It really wasn't nice. And the one who stood up to them and had a go back at them was, of course, David McCreary, who didn't take any prisoners himself. But they gave Peter Beardsley a really harsh time. And so 2-2, an entertaining game, a reasonable crowd. I think it's about 35,000, and a good game for Goddard, Paul Goddard. He was one of our stars, and one of their stars was Grimes, of course. And in defence, Breacher, who scored a goal as well as being tough in defence. So that's my second game.
Good stuff. That's Steve Foster there, for those of you who don't know. There's
Yes.
Big lump of a lad, him, like, and that was the person that Kenny Wharton was aiming the sitting on the ball thing at, because I think Steve Foster had taunted Newcastle after that result as well on the plastic pitch. Mitch, over to you for your second game.
The two games I had left to choose between, I was at both were 0-0. So given the lack of on-field entertainment, we might as well talk about both, because there is a little story attached to both. The first one was April '89, 0-0 at home, and why that sticks in my mind is it was one of the oddest teams I've ever seen Newcastle United turn out, through a combination of injury and we were in this transitional period still, where players were getting ready to be shipped out, and they were talking about bringing players in for the following season. And we had a team that had no right back in it, but 4 centre backs and 2 left backs and only 1 striker.
Who picked that, Bruce?
Well, it could have come out as Steve Bruce's great randomizer. Perhaps that's where he found the machine. Perhaps it was Jim Smith's, you know. But yeah, that was the thing that stood out. I think we had Benny Christensen playing at right back, and Glenn Roeder stepping up into midfield, and 2 left backs on the left hand side, Kenny Sanson, Paul Sweeney. You know, it was a weird mix of a team. And I think it might have also been, and I haven't checked this, it might have also been Mirandina's last appearance in a black and white shirt. He came on as sub. It's somewhere through that game, but I don't remember much about the game at all, other than that everybody was stood scratching their heads. We know when you used to get the programme and you used to have the team on the back, and everybody had their bookies' pens out, hastily making all the changes because the team was totally different to what it would have been. And just an awful game with a weird team and in a strange way to say goodbye to Mirandina. And the other one was the only time I've been to Kenilworth Road. It was December. Interestingly, I found this out when we were doing the research. Kenilworth Road's address is actually 1 Maple Road, apparently.
Yeah.
But that's another matter.
That's my
December. Yeah, December '88, and it was another 0-0 draw, and it's the only time I've ever been. It was Archie Goulet's debut, is the thing that comes from that. And I've got to know Archie, actually. He used to come to our practice when we had a practice in Market. Canny bloke, really canny bloke.
Top line.
And the entrance between the 2 houses to get into the ground. What a funny little ground that is.
Yeah.
Absolutely strange. And that's, again, I remember very little about the day, though, so consumption of a certain amount of alcohol may have had something to do with that as well. Yeah, that was the 2 games I could remember. No 4-0 amazing stunners, just weird teams and no goals to speak about.
Great stuff. Big shout out to our sponsors, as always, Spider VPN for your internet security. Been with us for the last 3 months. Big shout out to the lads down there, and they will be helping us with some events once we get out of this lockdown properly. Arcot Interiors as well. Visit their website, arcotinteriors.com. Well worth a look if you're thinking about getting a new kitchen. And their phone number is on there as well, 0191 265 8663. Enquiries at arcot.org.uk is their email address. Big shout out to them, and thanks to them for coming on board this month. Also, qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend and Newcastle, and John from Jab Signature, who makes our flyers. And if you're a first-time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. Hit the Newcastle Legends logo down in the bottom right-hand corner and just subscribe. It's free to subscribe. Hit the little thumb up to like the video and to share it. Just hit the share button. That shares it to your social media, and join the comments. Always plenty friendly chat in the comments from everybody. And a big shout out to John as well from QTech, who runs our website, nufcmatters.com. You can find all kinds on there, including the NUFC Matters t-shirts, but not the ones that we have up for grabs for the food bank. And a big thanks to George again. He bought another one. He must have quite the collection now of Mitch t-shirts. I'm not sure George will want this one, but it is up on my Twitter at the moment, at Steve Wraith, pinned to the top. And that is the Steve Wraith is God t-shirt. I'm glad to say that there's only one of them and that it's factually incorrect. So, yes.
You can rest assured I won't let it go cheap.
Thanks, George. Thanks. Brilliant stuff. So there we go. Get yourself onto there. Bid on my Twitter account, and hopefully making some more money for the food bank. Always going to a great cause. Steve, back to you for your next game, mate. If you've got any left.
I've got a game. Yeah, I've got a game. I've got a story behind it. The story behind the choices. Anyway, not that it was a scintillating match by all manner of football talk. I'm going back to let's see, August the 30th, 1980. Okay, there's a reason why I've picked this. Now, as somebody who spent your formative youth days in the 70s, you were in awe of Holland. You were in awe of the Dutch football. Ajax 71-2-3 winning the European Cup, the World Cup final of 74. The Johan Cruyff, Nieskins, people like that, Rensenbrink. Then you had 78, the World Cup, the final, and again, the Dutch playing this time, the Argentinians. Everything about it. We had Bastia turning up, the French team, with a Dutchman and Johan Cruyff, Johnny Rep, who ripped us apart in that particular game. And so it comes to 1980, and we've had a trialist from Holland signed on the books, and at the start of the season he'd done so well in the trial that Newcastle signed him. His name was Frans Koenen, and there was big things expected of Frans Koenen. He was a left-footed midfielder, could move about the pitch, so we're told. He was strong, he was skillful, and on the 30th of the 8th, 1980, obviously only the third game of the season, he scored for Newcastle in a 2-1 win against Luton. Other goal being scored by Terry Hibbert. That was it. Nothing else to say, really. He scored. He played 11 games. Never scored again. His performances were so bad that he was consigned to, as it describes in the book, the Central League. In other words, he was pushed out to the reserves, and then they gave him a free transfer. And that was it. So all of that excitement of Dutch football, the Dutch style that was going to come to us, and it was all going to go through Frans Koenen, it all went to pot after that one goal against Luton Town.
Sounds like when we got Rob Mcdonald. Do you remember that? He came from Dutch football. Oh, he's English, but he's been playing in Holland. He must be great. He must be really talented, dead good. Couldn't hit a cow's arse with a bloody banjo. Jesus, it was just ridiculous.
Right. Exactly. 11 games, 1 goal. But at least I saw the goal, I saw a Dutch score goal for Newcastle. I mean, we have had some really good Dutch players, but, Dutch goalkeeper in Tim Krul, Wijnaldum, players like that, But this Dutchman, with all the excitement of the start of the 1980s, and that was what happened. We actually finished 11th that season. We'd actually gone back. We'd gone, we'd got worse. We'd finished 9th the previous season under Billy Rafferty scoring, and now we'd finished 11th. But I think where this took us to at the end of that season was the start of the revolution, if you like, the following season, 1982, the arrival of Kevin Keegan. So, there was something for us to look forward to. Okay, we didn't know at the time. But I honestly thought, I remember that season thinking, Frans Koenen, a Dutchman. And you know what? I've segued all of that in, and it was against Luton Town, and I've never even mentioned Luton, But
fantastic, Steve. I think your stories are going to start well. At least I've seen him score. I think that's
it. Yeah, exactly.
At least I've seen him score. Is your new catchphrase.
I'm trying to think. I don't know whether I've seen anybody else score. We've got players in the first team at the minute that I've never seen score live, Steve.
True, very true. Yeah.
Who was managing that game, Steve? Arthur Cox was just about to be appointed.
Took over, didn't he?
The next month.
So was it McGarry?
I thought he got sacked before that, because that's the start of the season. I thought McGarry got sacked before that.
Yep, he might have. McGarry might have.
Remember who was the temporary manager in?
It was whoever came after Richard Dennis.
Well, McGarry. I don't know. Bill McGarry was in. Was I can't remember.
McGarry must have came after Richard Dennis.
Did your homework.
and then it would be, and then obviously Arthur Cox.
Yeah, well, it's a link into that. Like, I'm going to talk about a game that Arthur Cox was manager, which is, as you said there, Steve, the start of the build up. You know, when things were going to start and improve over the early years. The season after, I cannot remember an enormous amount about the game. I should have done from the way the game turns out, but it's another game with a story. It's on November 1981, and we actually won 3-2. And the game started with a goal in the first minute by a guy called Alan Brown, who we actually borrowed from Sunderland. We loaned him from Sunderland with a view to signing him. He scored in the first minute and the 35th minute as well. So we're winning 2-0. Now, the story attached to Alan Brown is that he only played 5 games and scored 3 goals in those 5 games, and the club couldn't afford to sign him. I don't know what they were wanting for him, but they couldn't afford to sign him. So he was shipped back to Sunderland, and Arthur Cox actually brought David Mills in until the end of the season, who was quite a decent player. But the way that game went after that is that Luton at that time were, as you mentioned earlier on, the 80s was Luton's big time under David Pleat. And they actually won the championship, the second division as it was called in those days, Division 2. They actually won the league that year. So we'd gone from 2-0 up at half time. And then in the last 10 minutes, Luton pulled 2 goals back. And then in the very last minute, Imre Verardi scored the winner. And we won 3-2. Team that day was Kevin Carn goal, John Brownlee fullback, Wes Saunders at left back, John Truick, Steve Carney, Peter Haddock, Alan Brown, Mick Martin, Imre Verardi, Kenny Wharton, and we'd also signed this young lad called Waddle from Sausage Factory in Towlow. A very good. No, he's rubbish. He was. If you might remember, he was a very gangly winger, and he just. I always thought that when he used to be in front of me and he stand, I thought they should get a chair for him to sit down on because he just didn't look as though he could run. But what a hell of a play over the years! We're not going to dispute what he did. So we won that game 3-2. Imre Verardi that season scored about 20 goals, and ultimately the season after was when Keegan signed, and I think he pipped Keegan even that season, even though Keegan got about 20 goals. And we ultimately sold Imre Verardi to sign this other young lad called Beardsley, who would also never make it as a footballer, as well as Waddle. So the rest is history, as we all know. So that was a game. As I said, I cannot remember much about the game, but I should have done. I can remember Alan Brown came, a blonde centre forward from Sunderland, and he obviously made an impact, but not enough to warrant whatever the coffers. You know, we're talking about Ashley not spending money. That was what it was like in those days under the likes of Seymour and Rutherford and them lot that were, the board at that time. And whatever they wanted, they couldn't afford to get him. So we had to get a loan in instead.
David Mills, of course. I was going to say David Mills, of course, is prominent probably for getting the goal that took us up against Huddersfield when Keegan was injured in the promotion season in 83-84.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think at that time you talk about the finances, Steve, and you also remember that Lord Westwood, I think he was like the president of the Football League or something as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And,
I was.
We were really well thought of in terms of the people who ran the football club and in the hierarchy of football, you know, with positions of authority.
McKeague, he was one of the top men in the Football League as well. Yeah. Highly thought of. And,
which shows you that what they were interested in was their own position, not necessarily the position of their own football club. But that was synonymous with lots of people in that particular era. You look, I mean, even the guy at Man City who took over, he suddenly became a big mouth in the Football League. But his club was falling to pieces, you know. His club was going down the pan at the time, you know, and that was just synonymous with owners in those days. And you know, like you say, we whinge about Ashley, but you know, it was just as bad then.
Well, I don't know. I mean, George, you can go further back than I can, but the 60 years I've been going comes up to 60 years next year. There was a post on Facebook today talking about getting rid of Ashley and all that, and saying in the 60 years I've gone, I would say, other than about 15 years we've been against the owners and the the directors most of the time.
Yeah.
It probably goes back before I started in 1962. George is probably tell us what it's like.
Well, all the time. I mean, I can remember even as a kid going with my uncles and my father and my grandfather, and they were always grumbling about what the board was doing, what the board wouldn't do. And you had all these stupid things at cup finals where all the other teams that went to cup final, the club bought the lads their suits or their blazers, and they didn't have to pay any of that. Not Newcastle. Supermarket will tell you about his cup final. They all got dressed up in black velvet suits and waistcoats, but that was courtesy of a tailor in town who treated them to that. They nearly had a strike before the final because the club wouldn't give the lads the money to get their suits. You know,
wasn't there a story behind the tracksuits as well? Them purple tracksuit tops that they wore, coming out for the '74 Cup final. They'd all been supplied by the Seymour Sports Shop.
Well, you had to buy all the stuff had to be bought.
And so they ended up picking this stupid bloody purple that he had like a X stock of. They say, right, there you go. That's what you're wearing at the cup final. You know, it's sort of a tin pot way of doing things. You know.
But I mean, George mentioned Frankie Brennan before, and I mean, obviously there was the big scandal over Frank who wanted to own or open his own sports shop in town, which he ended up doing. But because he did that, they told him he couldn't open it, or he had to leave. Because Stan Seymour already had a sports shop, and it was going to be a challenge to Seymour. So when he said, "No, I'm opening a sports shop," that was it. And I think, if I remember rightly, there was a huge meeting at the Civic Centre, a huge fan meeting at the City Hall, where everybody piled in to voice their opinion on what the club was doing, getting rid of Frankie Brennan. You know, I think there was hell on. Well, so we've got a history of it. Don't worry about that.
Well, my school team. With Alec Tate, the centre forward, who was our coach and teacher, he wanted new strips because he thought we were going to go a long way in all the cups, and which we eventually did. And he went to Seymour and said, he didn't ask them for nothing. He said, could I have a discount on a set of strips for the lads, because I think these lads are going to do something. And Seymour wouldn't give him a penny. And on his way out of the ground, who should he bump into but Frank Brennan? And he said to Frank, I've just been in to see Seymour and see if I could get some strips. So Frank Brennan said, go down to, he was in Gallagher then, go down to the shop in Gallagher and see my manager and tell him you want a set of goalkeeper to 11, black and white stripes, shorts, socks, the lot. And Frankie Brennan give Alec Tate the whole lot. Now, a little bit at the back of my mind sometimes says, is that why Alec Tate got transferred? I don't know. I don't think it was, but it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't. But the pictures I've got of my team in the cup finals, those shirts were brand new, and they were free gratis from Frank Brennan, not from Stan Seymour. Seymour wouldn't even give Alec Tate. I mean, this is one of his players. Wouldn't even give him a decent discount. Never mind give them nothing.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, Steve's right. It's been like that all the time, Steve.
Yeah.
Fans and owners and players and owners.
It was always take out rather than to put in. It wasn't a case of not putting money in. It was taking money out for themselves, and it was a closed shop.
Yeah, I think they even took money out of Northumberland FA because all the disciplinary meetings for any of the leagues used to take place on a Monday at James's Park. So that was where it was. So the Northumberland FA would hold a meeting, and I bet they were charging them an absolute for the Monday disciplinary meetings. That was the Newcastle United. It's typical,
Typical Newcastle, 100%. Yeah, we complain about things now. It's because we've all got experience of it. The youngsters have only had to put up with Mike Ashley. We've had some right characters in charge of the club over the years, and characters being polite.
I think that's why you've got to be patient about the takeover, because it took a long time. We started. What was ultimately the Magpie Group getting John in was all those guys that I was involved with 87, 88 when Dennis sacked. It took 13 years to get going. So we hope it doesn't take 13 years this time, but it's not going to be sorted in 5 minutes.
No, definitely not. Okay, we're going to finish off the show as always by going through some celebrity fans and finding some players that played for both teams. See if the lads can guess who they are with the picture board, and we'll go with the celebrity fans first. So some names here, please, lads, for these faces.
Oh, silence.
No.
Now, silence. I know. To be honest, last week you had a clean sweep on both. So
It's not, unless you've done something with her head, not Sarah Matthews, is it?
it's
No.
not.
No.
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 Nah.
No.
It's an early one for Steve Wraith then. Nikki Wardley. She's an actress. She has been in lots of things, but you'd probably know her best from her spell in Catherine Tate's show. So this one.
That's Gareth Matthews.
That's Matthews.
Yeah, that's Gareth Matthews, of course.
Oh.
You recognise the face, but can you give us the name?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Ah.
No.
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 Nah.
That's another one for me. Colin Salmon, the actor.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy, probably the most famous Luton Town fan.
Eric Morgan.
Eric Morgan.
Yes, Eric Morgan, the late great Eric Morgan.
Is that the rower?
She's a sports presenter, Steve.
Correct.
Is it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, Mitch.
Fair something.
Correct. Half a point.
Carruthers. Faith Carruthers.
Correct. Fair Carruthers. Good teamwork by the Mitchell brothers.
It's does the morning
Nick Owen.
Nick Owen,
Nick
yeah.
Owen.
Nick Owen, very good friend of Supermac, and obviously involved with the club, Luton Town as well.
Monty Panesar.
Monty Panesar, that's it. So that's your celebs for this week. Couple for me there, so I'm quite happy. Okay, so players that played or were involved with Newcastle and Luton. Wow, this was hard.
It was.
Graham Jones.
Graham Jones.
Is he involved with Newcastle? Do we know?
He still is, yes. He's definitely been a change of fortunes.
Well, I tell you what was noticeable after the match. The centre forward, our centre forward, Wilson, and Maximum, they went to Jones. They didn't go to Bruce at the end of the match.
Yeah, correct. Okay, we're looking for the guy in the white shirt.
Is that Ian Dowie?
Dowie.
Ian Dowie, yes. Ian Dowie, of course, was Alan Shearer's right-hand man in his short managerial stint at the club.
Is that Kazenga Lualawa?
Yeah.
Senga Lualawa,
Hey,
of course.
good call.
Supermac.
Supermac, of
Very
course.
young Supermac.
Regular on our show, of course.
Didn't have colour photos in those days, didn't
They didn't.
Darren Mcdonough.
Darren Mcdonough.
Yep, Darren Mcdonough.
Wasn't he first signing?
Keegan's first signing, yes.
Keegan's first signing, yeah. No,
Another one, 4 games or something, wasn't it? You know? That's Mick
Harford.
Mick Harford, the man that Joe Allen describes as hard as goat's knees.
Yeah.
Is it Alan Nielsen?
No, is that Alex Gillede?
That's him,
Alex Gillede.
Well done. And that rounds up my my search, my intensive search. So I'm going to go to Mitch because Mitch was saying off air. He thinks he's got a fairly tentative 11. I know it's difficult to find an 11, so go for it, Mitch.
The noise that accompanies this is it was my fingernails scraping along the very depths of a very deep barrel. But if you bear with us, I found a keeper called Jonathan Mitchell. He played for our reserves as a 15-year-old and was a bit of a sensation. and then disappeared to Luton. So there's my keeper. And I'm playing a back three of Viv Busby, Alex Gillade, and Alan Nielsen. Now, the thing about Alan Nielsen I didn't realise until I did a little bit of research was he was caretaker manager of Fulham of Luton 3 times. So is at the end of his playing career. Then we've gone for a midfield 2 of Darren Mcdonough and Gordon Hudson. And then a front 5 of Mick Harford, Kazenga Lawalawa, Supermac, Daryl Murphy, and Imre Varadi.
Wow.
Who finished his career off at Luton.
Brilliant.
And that'll be managed, and I'll do this because I know Stu was going to do this if he could have been with us tonight. They'll be managed by John Carver, Stu's good mate.
Brilliant
who
stuff.
was caretaker manager there after he'd been at Sheffield United, then he ended up at Luton, and he ended up taking charge of Luton for a few games.
Neil, the Gordon Hudson you got in it. It should not be a Gordon Heinsohn.
Heinsohn, sorry, yes, I can't read my own writing.
Remember him? Yes,
good stuff. Anybody else got one? I'm not going to ask you all.
The only
George Stubborn. George might
the
have
only thing I want to add to it was that way back in the 20s, of course, they had bought a bloke called George Stobart from us, who was the first £1,000 player, and that was us buying him from Middlesbrough for £1,000. And then after about 5 or 6 years, he moved on to Luton. So he was a centre forward, George Stobart. I think it was about the late 1920s when that happened.
Well, the other 2 names I had lined up to stick into an 11 if I was really desperate were Robert Lee's two sons, by virtue of genetics.
Yes. Yeah, I know that was where I was getting to when I was starting to look for players that played for both. Genetics.
I was just going to name 11 Supermax. That's all I was going to do. I was going to read out his name 11 times.
Well, the only name not mentioned is a guy, it was again scraping the barrel to find Eddie Connolly in the 30s.
Yeah.
As a winger.
Yeah.
Never heard of him.
Right.
Didn't know what he was like, but
Yeah.
I don't think he was very. He was, from what I read about him, he was pretty tricky, but he overdid it too much, I think.
He can go on the bench. We might need him at some point. But lads, fantastic. Listen, we did a great job there. I think with such a hard team.
Limited resources, Steve.
We've had it. Well, yeah, limited resources. We've had the request in Derby County next week.
Right.
Okay.
You'll have to put up with a few Harry stories for Derby County, mate.
Brilliant stuff.
Yes.
Lads, as always, been an absolute pleasure. Always good. And we hit some new heights. Over 1,000 people watching the show last week, which was fantastic. So it shows that
Fabulous.
There's plenty of people like to hear a lot of stories from yesteryear from you guys. So thanks for doing it. And look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good week, lads. Take care.
Good luck with what you're
Cheers,
doing,
everyone.
Steve.
Thanks, lads. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn.